Hello everybody and welcome back to Expert Examiner IELTS. My name is Glyn and in this video I'm going to give some feedback on Taha's speaking performance, so let's jump straight in. Good afternoon, my name is Glyn. Would you please tell me your full name?
Yeah, sure. Good afternoon. My name is Zeki Taha Oğuzhan. Yeah.
And what should I call you?
You can call me Taha with my middle name.
Okay, thank you, Taha. Now, in this first part of the test, I'm going to ask you some questions about yourself. Where do you live?
Well, I'm living in the south part of Turkey.
Okay, first immediate thing. The pronunciation seems a little bit staccato. Now, I didn't notice this so much live during the test, but, well, I'm living in Turkey. It sounds a little bit staccato. Staccato means we don't have enough intonation, right? Staccato means that it sounds like this. So just listen again. In this first part of the test, I'm going to ask you some questions about yourself. Where do you live?
Well, I'm living in the south part of Turkey.
So we do get a bit of intonation at the end, Turkey. It feels a bit strange. Sentence stress seems a bit off. Now, the first question, where are you living, or where do you live, or do you work, or do you study? Candidates should have nice, simple, short answers prepared for that. So we shouldn't be fighting over these words and letting these simple answers affect our pronunciation. So we don't want to do that early in the test. But okay, this is just the first answer. I'm happy to, make a mental note of it, but put it to one side. It doesn't affect my scoring yet at all.
A city called Osmaniye. It's an insignificant city, I would say.
Okay, it seems strange to describe a city as insignificant without explaining what you mean, but okay, good use of the prefix in with insignificant.
Yeah.
And what do you like most about this place?
So the place that I'm living in, there are like plenty of forests, and I'm also located in the.
I like there's plenty of forests. I'm located in. I don't know.
In the beginning of the mountain, so I can.
I'm located in the beginning of the mountain. Bit of a mispronunciation of mountain. There are plenty of forests around, and I live in the mountains. It's fine. We don't need this like to be located in, and I don't know, the beginning of the mountain, like the bottom of the mountains, maybe.
Go to the mountain like wherever I want, whenever I want. And also the place that I'm living in is famous for.
So again, we get that the place that I'm living in twice. I liked it the first time. It's like, oh, that's a complex sentence, but naturally now we'd refer to it as this place. We don't need to keep repeating the place that I'm living in.
For their peanuts. So I really.
Famous for its peanuts, not famous for their peanuts, but it's famous for its peanuts. Cool.
Really like eating peanuts as well, peanut butter especially.
Cool, nice. I like this very human approach. It's known for its peanuts. I like eating peanuts, especially peanut butter. Cool, nice. And is there anything you'd like to change about this place?
Well, right now,
just notice a little bit of the well. Candidate has answered, I think, 2 or maybe all of the questions beginning with well. So just be careful with that. Generally, it doesn't affect your score, but sometimes if examiners are on the fence with a particular mark, they might just think, well, he did start every question with well, and that might sometimes be a determining factor. In most cases it won't be, but try to avoid it if you can.
Infrastructure isn't so well because of.
The infrastructure isn't so good. Well, we don't usually use it as an adjective. Usually it's an adverb. Sometimes it's used as an adjective, like meaning feeling healthy, but yeah, the infrastructure isn't very good. Hopefully you'll explain what you mean.
The major earthquake in 2023.
Cool, major earthquake. I mean, obviously a terrible event, but nice use of major. Could have said big earthquake, but went with major earthquake, which is, very good vocab.
I would say that I would definitely choose to.
Love this use of I would definitely. Really like it.
To change our ways and roads. It's really hard to, go somewhere else.
Really hard to go somewhere else. Really hard to. We have a nice phrasal verb for this in English, to get around. People might argue, is it really a phrasal verb or is it something else? Is it a get construction? Doesn't matter. To get around. Yeah, it's really difficult to get around. That means to navigate your way through the city.
Yeah.
And do you think you'll continue living in this place in the future? So a bit of future time. Let's see how the candidate does with this.
I don't think so. I'm living
I don't think so.
I'm living with my parents right now. I'm really trying hard to achieve something in order to start my life. So yeah, I would say that I will move soon.
Cool. I would say a few times, but there's nothing wrong with that. I will move soon. Okay. Simple modal verb with will to predict the future. Okay, cool. Let's talk about drinking now. How much water do you usually drink every day? So this is one of those questions where it's like we don't need specifics. Do you drink a lot of water? Do you drink enough water? Do you drink plenty of water? Maybe you don't drink enough water? We're not looking for the exact amount, but
I can't say a specific portion of drinking water,
maybe not portion, but amount. I can't state a specific amount of water.
but I would say that I usually drink like maybe 5 glasses of water.
Cool. So this type of correction, self-correction, I don't mind. Bottles, changing bottles for glasses, all fine. Yeah, candidate on topic. Candidate is developing nicely, easy to understand. Ideas are simple. Responses feel quite human.
Excuse me. So it really helps me to refresh myself while I'm studying.
Cool. Helps me to refresh. That's a bit of complex grammar. Help plus somebody plus to do something and then to refresh myself. Good vocab. Yeah, solid performance so far. And what other things do you drink?
Like Coke and, some other things that you can consider as a junk.
So again, just for some reason, the pronunciation comes out a little bit mechanical. Just notice.
Like and, some other things that you can consider as a junk.
But I still think, the sentence stress is kind of noticeable. It's a little bit slow. It's a little bit mechanical. It's a little bit lacking in intonation, but it's not, it's not terribly so.
Drinks, like occasionally I drink, but most of the time I drink.
Cool. I love this. Occasionally but most of the time that's really, really good natural development. Very nice organization of ideas.
Water and guzzling water, especially also. I forgot to mention about it. I really drink a lot of guzzling water as well.
Guzzling water? Maybe he's mixing up sparkling water with I know in some languages they call it water with gas. But gasling water, I've never heard of gasling water. Maybe it's a term. I think the candidate is trying to say sparkling water or carbonated water, maybe gassy water, but gasling sounds strange. And does your country have any well-known drink brands?
Yes, we have Iran. It's a kind of combination of yogurt and water. And
cool, it's kind of combination of, but notice the pronunciation here of yogurt. So you hear all of the vowels. Now in English, of course, usually we say yogurt, and we wouldn't say yogurt because in English, most of our unstressed vowels are pronounced with this schwa sound, the like computer, yogurt. Candidate pronounces his vowels a little bit full at times. Yogurt. Just notice it.
We have Iran. It's a kind of combination of yogurt and water. And you can compare, you can mix it.
Again with that compare with that full o, clock, maybe he's pronouncing it with the horse, compare. But anyway, it's noticeable that o, right? Again, in English, we usually have this schwa sound, compare. So this candidate is kind of reading, the English letters in their full sounds, But to get that higher mark in pronunciation, like you're okay to get 7 with it. And in some cases, if you have enough connected speech and enough intonation, you may even get an 8. But too much, over pronouncing vowels in their full forms, using words like yogurt and compare instead of yogurt and compare. That, stands out as a noticeable feature of pronunciation where it's like, okay, candidate doesn't seem to be aware of how, unstressed vowels work in English. It's okay. It's not a big problem. Most important thing, of course, in pronunciation is to be easily understood, and it's easy enough to understand the candidate.
Like you can have it with any kind of food. It really goes well with any kind of food.
Love that. It really goes well with any kind of food. Very nice. So natural. And it's so much more, that's so much more impressive than like be located in the mountains. It goes well with any kind, or it kind of goes well with any, or really goes well with any kind of food. Love that go well with. Really like it.
So iron is one of the special drinks that we have.
And are there any kinds of drinks that you avoid?
Well, I don't drink alcohol.
Notice that use of well again, so just be careful with that. Again, it's not going to kill your score, but, it's good to be aware of the words that you overuse.
Or like any kinds of alcohol, and also like the other drinks that harmful, such as like I said, Coke. It's kind of junk drink.
Okay, but didn't you say earlier that you drink Coke? Maybe I'm getting confused now. I thought earlier you said that you drank Coke, and now you're saying Coke is a drink that you try to avoid. I mean, maybe you try to avoid drinking it, but still sometimes you drink it. That's possible.
Like I try to be at the safe side. I try
On the safe side, not at the safe side. It's just a tiny little imprecise use of preposition, but try to be on the safe side. Nice attempt at a bit of natural language there.
to drink as much water as I can and gas and water as
That's a nice comparative structure. I try to drink as much water as I can. So there are little bits of language like this that lots of people might not notice as being really sophisticated grammar. We have a comparative noun here. You might know comparative adjectives like I'm not as healthy as I used to be. Cool. Comparative adverbs, I don't eat as healthily as I used to. Fine. But this comparative noun, I don't drink as much Coke as I try not to drink as much Coke as I can, or something like that, like as much something as plus subject plus modal or auxiliary. Yeah, that's really impressive grammar. Let's talk about parks now. Are there a lot of parks near where you live? For some reason, my audio is a bit bad in the speaking test, and I really don't know what's causing it, because I've tried playing with my microphone settings. Don't know why. It just happens. Sorry. Are there lots of parks where you live?
well,
Again, we get that well. It's not probably not going to kill your mark, but yeah.
unfortunately, no. The closest park to my place is about like maybe 15 minutes with a car drive.
With a car drive is a bit strange. About 15 minutes by car is fine. 15 minutes away. It's about 15 minutes by car.
So like there are a couple of parks that I can go, but it's kind of at the distance, like where I can go like with only a car.
Distance I can go with only by car or something like that. Yeah, I can only get there by car is probably better. I can't walk there. I can only get there by car. But okay. But again, very easy to understand exactly what the candidate means. It's just not always the most precise choices with language. And when did you last go to a park?
Well, yesterday I really like going park because
I really like going park. I really like going to parks. Strange that you missed that preposition. I really like going park. I really like going to parks. Cool, but don't forget, right, that this is when did you last go to a park? So I'd like you to tell me about like, oh yes, I went to a park yesterday, and then give a bit of extra information. I really like going to parks. Okay, that's development, but since the question is a pastime question, I'd like a bit of pastime grammar.
As it's one of the uh, activities that I can do because
For me, this background information would have been so much better for the first question. Are there any parks near you? Unfortunately, no. I mean, the nearest one is 15 minutes away by drive, and that's a pity because I really like going to parks. Right? That would be the first question. Is the place I think to give that background information that you like going to parks. Yeah. So just a minor strange thing with the organization of ideas.
there are not too much of things that I can do here. So
Not too much of things, not too many things. Not too much of things, not too many things.
I also like nature a lot. So yeah,
Okay, you're talking about the things that you like, what you can and what you can't do. The question was, when did you last go to a park? Not, do you like going to parks?
yesterday I went to a park.
Okay, so finally we get that past simple. Yesterday I went to a park. Great, candidate can use the verb go in the past. Just want to check. So yeah, just be careful with that. Make sure that your questions are on topic.
Okay, thank you. Now, in this next...
All right, so for thoughts on part one, the first answer and one or two answers had kind of staccato pronunciation. Apart from that, I thought the pronunciation was very, very clear, easy to understand. At times, he shows a little bit of intonation, a little bit of connected speech, but probably not enough sustained for a band 8 or anything like that. But I do think, that pronunciation's probably looking, at the moment, like a 7. Vocab, I think, is natural, sufficient for the task. One or two, a few cases where you think like, that's not the exact precise wording. There are better ways of wording it, but candidate gets the meaning across. And on top of that, there is a lot of good stuff, like to refresh and things like that when he's talking about water. So candidate certainly has sufficient lexical resource to deal with both of those, or all three of those topics in part one. All good stuff. Grammar is generally accurate. A couple of really nice bits of grammar. Okay, help somebody to do something. To complex structure, but quite easy. But I like the use of the comparatives, like as much water as, and things like that. So, a couple of instances of really, really quite nice grammar. Not a huge range, not a huge grammatical range, but certainly sufficient for task 1. All good stuff. Yeah, and fluency and coherence, fine. Candidate develops, again, the organization of ideas. Just occasionally it's slightly strange, but I think the candidate develops reasonably well. Candidate self-correct sometimes. It's not a big issue. A little bit of hesitation, not a big issue. I think the candidate develops, uses connectives, and organizes his ideas in a pretty good way. So a strong start to the test. Let's see what the candidate needs to do in task 2. His task is to describe a photo that he likes. Cool. So when you're describing a photo, you might want to say, what's in the photo, what's in the background, what's in the foreground, on the right, on the left, blah, blah, blah. So a bit of language describing the photo. Most people kind of learn that at pre-intermediate, intermediate. But let's see how the candidate does.
Between 1 and 2 minutes to give your talk, and I will let you know when the time is up. Can you start speaking now, please?
Okay, sure. The photo that I really like
Well, good start. The photo that I really like
was the photo that I took at the top of the Galata
cool. The photo that I took. So again, past simple.
Tower in Istanbul. So in this day, I was with my sister and I was working in Istanbul, to be honest.
Cool. I was working, bit of past continuous, nice.
And I was with my sister. We were going around, getting around to the city, and we had a chance to visit Galata
Just missed a word or two there.
Tower. And it was a really mesmerizing, building.
Okay, it was a really mesmerizing building. Fine. I don't love it when candidates use kind of big dramatic words to describe buildings and then leave it there. I find it much more impressive to say something like, what I found mesmerizing about the building was, and then da 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 da. For me, that shows skill rather than saying it was very mesmerizing. It's like, okay, cool.
Coming from the Byzantine Empire.
Okay, so you're doing a good job of describing the tower.
So we really had a hard time to wait there to take photos because there was a really long line for us to wait. And also the second or third floor of the Galata Tower has a museum.
So I don't know why, but the candidate's video has stopped working. Let's just check. Oh no, it's back there.
At the top of the Galata Tower in Istanbul.
Sorry, I'm
I
just
was
gonna.
working in Istanbul, to be honest, and I was with my sister. We were getting around to the city, and
Sorry for the repeating. Let's just jump forward.
building coming from the Byzantine Empire. So we really had a hard time to wait there to take photos because there was a really long line
Cool, a really long line, fine.
for us to wait. And also the second or third floor of the Galata Tower has a museum.
Okay, but are we talking about the photo here, or are we talking about the tower? Because it really seems it's like talk about a time when you took a trip with a family member, or talk about a famous building that you visited. We're not really describing the photo, are we?
Inside of it as well, where you can see the minimap of Istanbul. And after that, like there were a lot of tourists as well. But like we had a really hard time to find a spot to take had my photos taken.
Okay, have my photos taken. That's if it's by somebody else, and I don't know if it is if you took the photo, because earlier I think you mentioned that you took the photo, and now you're saying I had my photo taken, which is good causative passive, but I suggest that somebody else took the photo. The candidate is freezing. The candidate's video is freezing here. That's not a problem. My side, it seems to be a problem. The candidate side, but that's okay. We can hear him fine.
So at the end, I really dressed well, and also
In the end, I really dressed well. Don't quite get that.
I did a really good preparation for my air for this special day because like my sister was with me.
Okay, now he's repeating that his sister's with him, and this is what we usually see, right? B1 candidates break down after about 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and then start repeating their ideas. You know, the B2 candidates usually go for a minute and then they break down and start repeating their ideas. C1s, sometimes towards the end, they kind of break down, they get lost, they're off script. And for me, this is just a sign that, you know, candidates aren't prepared or haven't done enough task twos practice wise. They maybe don't know how to take notes, or they don't know how to use their notes to fill 2 minutes, because you know you should never be totally lost in this. You should never go completely off script. The notes that you take in that 1 minute preparation, they should really guarantee that you get through that 2 minutes without really repeating stuff.
And we were to see a lot of places, and
We were to, you know, see a lot of places. Again, it's clear that he's a little bit lost here because the coherence is breaking down now.
I really looked at to my side, and my sister took my photo, and ever since I've been using this photo like a lot of
Okay, that's not ever since I've been using this photo. That's a nice bit of grammar right to throw in right at the end.
for numerous platforms to the numerous platforms. I believe this is the only photo that I have
Okay,
like in a
thank you.
proper photo.
All right. So you've been talking about this photo that you like.
All right, so we're back. The candidate's video is back. Good to know. All right, so any thoughts on the part 2 here? The most obvious thing is that he spent more time describing, the journey, or not the journey, sorry, the trip, the time that he spent in this place and the tower itself and what's there. Didn't spend that much time really talking about the photo. So, it's kind of on topic, but it's not absolutely fully on topic. And he breaks down after about 1:30. He seems to get lost, which is okay, but he does, maintain a reasonably good flow of speech for that first 90 seconds. Again, throws in some decent vocab there, describing the tower, and some good vocab, like some good grammar ever since I've been using it as my profile picture on numerous platforms. Don't love numerous platforms. I find this word numerous to be a bit, academic or heightened. I use it on all my platforms, on so many platforms. It sounds a bit more natural. Numerous platforms seems a bit try-hardy, but okay, a decent task 2. So the candidate's doing well. He's got through task 1, task 2. I don't love the fact that he is a bit off topic, and if I was on a bad day, if this was the 5th candidate that I'd listened to who's off topic, I might bring his mark down for fluency and coherence. But if this was like the first candidate I'd listened to in the day, then I would probably be a bit more generous and think, it's okay. He's not really off topic. He's just, the focus is slightly in a different place. For reference, I probably even nowadays I probably go through about 30 different candidates every day. So I do know this thing of examiner fatigue, where how you mark something at the end of the day can sometimes be different to how you mark something at the beginning of the day. Of course, I fight with myself to try to make sure that this doesn't happen, but the mood of the examiner can change. So again, be careful, make sure, don't take any risks, make sure that you're fully on topic, because you don't want to give any examiner any reason to take marks away. And if you're the type of examiner that really wants to take marks away, an examiner could justify a low score for fluency and coherence by saying, nope, candidate's off topic. So be careful.
Let's talk about photography now. What kind of things do people like taking photos of?
They like taking photos of other people. They like taking photos of landscapes. They like taking photos of forests and mountains and animals and houses and sunsets and stars and the sky and the moon. Lots of possible ideas.
Excuse me, can you repeat the question again?
Mm-hmm. What kinds of things do people like taking photos of?
Okay. So firstly, nature is one of the mesmerizing spots that people have desire to take photos.
So I don't love this answer. Firstly, nature is one of the most mesmerizing spots that people like to, or have a desire to take photos. And nature is far too broad. So just be specific. People like taking photos of things in nature, for example, forests or mountains.
And also like some small animals as well, like.
It's weird. Again, the organization is weird. They like taking photos of nature because it's mesmerizing, and also small animals. He says small animals, putting the stress on small, as if he had said big. So people like taking photos of like these big wild animals like gorillas and lions, but they like small animals as well. And for me to contrast nature with and small animals as well, it's an odd answer. It's a bit strange.
Such as bees and butterflies as well, and
yeah, they do.
Some of the people are
some people. We don't need some of the people. Some people
really into technology as well. They really take a lot of some of the different kinds of plane photos, maybe aircrafts.
Take a lot of plane photos. Take a lot of photos of planes is probably better.
Yes, I would say. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I noticed candidates just rubbing his hands a little bit. Maybe he's thinking like, "Oh, I didn't love that answer." Simplify. Some people like to think. Yeah, I've done a lot of practice speaking tests in my life, and I try doing them in different ways to see what works for me. I try being honest, I try making up details, and I also put on different personas. And one thing that I found can be useful is the idea of answering every question like Homer Simpson or something, right? Thinking of the someone who's not very smart and thinking, well, what would Homer Simpson say? And he'd say, I think people like taking a lot of photos of food. But I can't do the accent. Some people like taking lots of photos of food because food is delicious and yummy. And then they put this photo on Instagram. I think that's stupid. Like, why do you want to put your photos of food on Instagram? And I think that's, an absolutely fine answer for IELTS. Trying to talk about the things in nature that people take photos of. Well, good luck, because now you're going to have to find that vocab specifically of things in nature. Homer Simpson doesn't need to worry about that because he's talking about food, and that's a bit more familiar. Like they take photos of like breakfast when they have like bacon and eggs and sausages. I think, sometimes it's nicer and sometimes it's easier to do IELTS if you're a little bit stupid. The candidate doesn't have this problem. The candidate has the problem where he's kind of smart.
What skills or abilities does a good photographer need?
That's not an easy question, right? Skills that a footballer needs, fine. They need to be fast. They need to be strong. They need to be physically fit. But photographer, it's a bit tricky.
Well, firstly, you shouldn't shake too much, and
You shouldn't shake too much. That's true. To have a steady hand, you shouldn't shake too much. I don't know. Is that a skill or an ability? It might be, yeah.
you should have a good device to take a photo
That's not a skill, right? You should have a good device to take your photo. That's not a skill or an ability.
with. Uh, on the other hand, what can I say more? Um,
So, okay, we know idea generation is tough in part 3, and we should always talk through. If I was doing this, I'd say, okay, what else can I say? Well, skills that a photographer needs. Trying to verbalize the thoughts.
like people should,
Okay, he gets,
you know, have a
and you can hear the pain, right? I mentioned this before. How comfortable is the candidate speaking? And when candidates make sound like, that's a sound of frustration. And that is, it's a very easy thing to notice as an examiner. Facial expressions, sounds such as, that shows that you are not at ease. It shows that you are uncomfortable. Sometimes you have to fake it. It's okay not to have a perfect idea. But again, don't give examiners reasons to take marks away. See if you can hear it. Notice this little sound.
on the other hand, what can I say more? Um, like people should, you know, have a
People should have a. People should have a. The hands start coming in, and again, all of this is noticeable discomfort.
passion to find some sceneries as well. Like they have to,
I don't know if he's saying passion or patience. I think he's trying to say patience.
find the chance to take photos. Maybe they have to wait for so long of times because sometimes taking a good photo requires really good passions, really, determined passions, I would say. Yeah.
Love this idea of determined patience. Of course, we do have a mispronunciation of passion of patience where the candidate is pronouncing it more like passions, which that does cause strain because it's, he's pronouncing a different word, passions instead of patience. I like the idea, determined patience, but you can see it's really difficult for the candidate to get that idea out. It's okay to have a lack of ideas, but we want to have a lack of ideas in a natural way. Like being a good photographer, I don't know, because it's like, it's not something, you don't need to be like super physically fit to do it, do you? But then I suppose, if you're taking photos of things in nature, maybe you do need to be quite fit. So yeah, if you're walking around all day taking photos, you have to be fit. But it's not really what photographers, it can help, but it's not really, it doesn't make you a good photographer being fit. So I don't know, some type of creativity, like artists, they know what looks beautiful. Like I have no idea what looks beautiful, but like artists and I guess photographers, they can see something and they can tell immediately like this will look good on camera. Now, this isn't a sophisticated idea from me, and this isn't a rehearsed idea. I didn't write this idea down before. I just spoke openly and honestly about my difficulties answering that question, and I was able to produce an answer to that question eventually. Yeah, without, appearing to be in too much discomfort.
And how was taking photographs?
Of course, I have an advantage that English is my first language, but the point that I'm trying to make is it's a question of panicking or not panicking. And when people ask me a question that I don't know the answer to, I don't panic. I don't have the voice in my head that says, you really should know the answer to this, and shame on you for not knowing the answer. Because I know I'm not an expert in photography, and nobody expects me to give a full, sophisticated breakdown of the skills required to be a photographer. But as an L1 user of English, I can talk my way through difficult questions. And that's what it's about in part 3. It's about dealing with that cognitive pressure, not panicking, and talking your way through without seeming like you are in too much discomfort.
In the past different to how it is nowadays?
So the question is, how was taking photos in the past different to how it is nowadays? This question, we would expect stuff like, oh, in the past we used to da-da-da-da-da, we don't da-da-da-da-da anymore. Oh, we had this in the past. And in some ways it's similar because we still da-da-da-da-da. There's a lot of language that we use when we talk about like changes between the past and the present. And again, for me, candidates in general aren't very well prepared for this question. They don't really exploit language of change a lot.
I would say there are a lot of differences. First of all, the photos that in the past, the photos in the past were black and white. So there is a really big revolution. You can get your photos in colorful way. You
In colorful way, in color.
can print your photos in a colorful way as well.
You can print your photos in color.
And also there's another advantage, which is
again, there's another advantage. Okay, I guess he didn't really set it up as like, oh, the new way is much better because we have it in color. And there's another advantage. The question asks you to talk about the differences. If you want to say that the new way is better, that's fine. But I don't think we can jump, or it's a bit strange in terms of organization to jump from one difference is da 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 and another advantage is da 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 da. Because if it's another advantage, we want to set up the earlier point and say that that's an advantage. But of course, this is a speaking test, not a writing check, not a writing test, and so that we accept a little bit of disorganization of ideas. It's okay.
You can take a lot, like as much as photos you want, and you can
as much as photos as you want, as many photos as you want, as many photos as you want.
Store those photos in one device, and like you can bring up those photos at any time.
And again, a bit of comparative language would be really useful here. This would make the point better. In the past, people had to use, these big cameras, and when they took photos, they had this film and they needed to develop this film, and it took a long time. But nowadays, everyone uses digital cameras, and you can put in a little memory card and that can hold like tens of thousands of photos. So that's a big difference. Really comparing the two would be clearer.
And also some technological advancements as well. Some, advanced cameras that you can capture in a moment, really
advanced cameras you can capture in a moment. I don't know what that means. All cameras capture moments by definition.
accurate way.
Thank you. Yeah. So I decide to, cut the candidate off. I feel like the answer is long enough and we need to move on.
All right, let's talk about creativity now. So we know a lot of creative people become photographers, but apart from photography, what...
Really sorry for my audio.
Other professions might a creative person be interested in?
I would say graphic designers, it also requires a lot of creativity.
Agree.
Because they expect you to create something with your imaginary.
Expect somebody to do something. But he says they expect you to create something with your imaginary. Imaginary is the adjective. The noun is imagination. So again, I understand what the candidate means, but candidate doesn't know that difference between imagine verb, imaginary adjective, and imagination noun.
You have to use your imaginary to create.
Have to use your imagination.
Flyers or something like that for maybe a company or.
I think if there were graphic designers watching this, Taha, they would say, we do more than create flyers. How dare you? But yeah, fair point.
Ready for a wedding or I can give an example from my profession as well, like inventors, engineers. It really requires a lot of creativity, immense amount of creativity to be honest.
Well, immense amount of, okay, really nice.
Because what we see outside is kind of like...
Love it. What we see outside. What we see outside is kind of really good cleft sentence. Amazing.
A lot of revolution from cars to planes.
A lot of revolution. That sounds a bit odd.
Requires a lot of creativity and knowledge as well. You should put up some ideas.
Okay, but the focus should be creativity. So focus on that, about how people who invent cars, why that requires some level of creativity.
Your head and
so now the candidate is extending, but it's a little bit difficult to follow.
Make it transform it into a product, let's say. Yeah.
Okay, so I kind of get the idea.
Some people say that it's impossible to teach someone how to be creative. What do you think?
Well, there are different kinds of people, also different kinds of brains.
Yeah, so it is, this is okay. It's not a... I would never say that it's wrong to do this. Sometimes when people are asked a question, instead of answering it directly and then giving the justification, they start with the justification. Now, the problem with this is that sometimes if you start with the justification, you can forget where you're going and then you can forget to answer the question, right? So if the question is like, which footballer do you prefer, Messi or Ronaldo? And you say, well, that's picking a footballer is very difficult, because there's a lot of things that go into being a good footballer, and being a good footballer isn't just one thing, because there are many different kinds of footballers. And it's like, okay, but Messi or Ronaldo? Whereas if you start with, I'd go with Messi because I think he's just an absolute genius. I think Ronaldo worked hard to get where he is, and don't get me wrong, he's a phenomenal player and he's achieved a lot. But if I had to choose one, I would choose Messi. I just think there are so many moments in his career where he created something out of nothing to completely change a game, right? And then we know the answer. We know that I've chosen Messi because I've started by saying Messi. And so when we ask, is it possible to teach people to be creative? or some people say it's impossible to teach people to be creative. What do you think? It's always better to start with, yes, I agree it's impossible. No, it's possible to teach people. And then explain.
People have minds that people have.
Mindset, not mind step.
So some people might be into numerical areas.
So still, after all this answer, I don't know if the candidate believes that it's possible to teach, whether it's impossible to teach people to be creative.
But on the other hand, some others would be into to.
So this is all a justification, or this is all an explanation that people are different. But okay, the question was, some people think it's impossible to teach people how to be creative. What do you think?
The creative side. And
do you think those numerically focused people, do you think those people could be taught to be more creative?
So I'm really trying to get the candidate back on topic here.
I would say yes, because
finally we get an answer.
If you're numerically into something and you can express yourself in a numerical way in your profession, most of the people that have numerical interests are engineers, doctors.
But there's nothing in this answer about how or whether we can teach people. Can we give people tasks? Can we train people's brains? Can we give them, I don't know, some type of like brainstorming skills, tasks, courses, or something, or lessons? There's nothing in there about teaching people to be creative.
And inventors, that's how people who has numerical interests could become creative.
So he's kind of trying to explain the process by which people who are more numerically focused or numerically driven can become creative. But the question is, can we teach these people to become creative? So again, he is, most partially on topic, maybe even mostly on topic, but I still don't feel like there is a clear, satisfying answer to that question.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That is the end of the test.
All right, so a really nice candidate, really nice to all of the candidates that I speak to on this channel are all very, very nice. Of course. Yeah, did a good job. I think this one is quite an easy one to mark. I am surprised that so many people in the comment section wanted to award this candidate a 6. Some people said 6.5. I'm going to go a little bit higher. Sorry, that shouldn't say 8. Fluency and coherence, I'm going to go 7, but I'm going to say 7 but. So, your answers are mostly on topic. And you develop sensibly, most questions sensibly. In part 3, the development is a little more difficult to follow, and most of part 2 is arguably slightly off topic. Arguably. Some people might say, no, it is connected because, he's talking about the place where he was, where that photo was taken. For me, there's too much description of other things, not including the photo. So, some people might say it's slightly off topic, but I do think there is enough. I think in some cases, there was real style with the way in which he developed his ideas. Yeah, lexical resource, again, I think it's clear 7. So you have, don't know what happened there. So you clearly have enough vocab to talk about a wide range of subjects in pretty good detail. You use plenty of less common vocab, topic-specific vocab, you use plenty of that, but it's not always precise. So we talk about that like it's 15 minutes by car, but 15 minutes with a car, I think you said, instead of it's a 15-minute drive away. That's not the only example. Many examples like that in the test where it's like, I understand what he means, but yeah, he hasn't worded it perfectly. But for me, definitely, there's enough in there for a 7. Grammatical range and accuracy, I think this is, for me, a comfortably 7. So you have frequent error-free sentences. I don't know if we can say the majority of the sentences are error-free, but certainly frequent error-free sentences. You have a good range of structures, including some accurate use of complex structures. What we see outside is, really love that as a setup. A couple of help somebody to do something, expect somebody to do something, those complex verb patterns, some embedded stuff like the place that I'm living in, stuff like this. So yeah, for me, accuracy is decent, lots of error-free sentences, and for me, you do show enough range for that band 7. And pronunciation, just about enough for a 7, I would say. So the best thing about your pronunciation is it is, despite the odd mispronunciation, passion versus patience, for example, it is very easy to understand your speech. You use some intonation and chunking. Chunking is the way that we group words together, some intonation and chunking, but this isn't fully sustained. There are parts of your language that sound a little bit mechanical, a little bit like this at times, but for me, you have all of the positive features of band 6. And because of how easy it is to understand you, how I don't need to put any effort in to understand you, for me, your intelligibility, how easy it is to understand you, is closer to that band 8. And so overall, band 7 for that. So overall, that gives you a score of 7. Found this to be quite an easy one to mark. Yeah, any areas of improvement? So critically, make sure that you're on topic in part 2. Don't give any examiner a reason to give you a lower mark, so make sure that you're on topic in part 2. My advice to you, and you don't have to take this, my advice is try to answer questions directly first and develop second. That question about, like, is it possible to teach people how to be creative? We want to know that answer immediately. Better to get that answer out immediately and then do the development. If you start with the development, then there's a higher likelihood, higher probability that you will drift off topic, and the examiner will be thinking, well, I'm still waiting for you to answer the question. Anything else? Any other areas of improvement? Vocab, I think, is fine. Grammar, I think, is fine. Maybe try to avoid using well in every sentence, in every answer. Again, it's not going to cost you too much, but it is noticeable that you use well. Often you start answers with well. Some people on this channel answer their questions with actually. Some answer it with honestly. This candidate answers with well. But okay, candidate's doing, very, very well. 7.0 overall for me, C1. Now, if this candidate, would I be really surprised if this candidate got 6.5 in the speaking test? No. There might be some examiners that think pronunciation's a bit too staccato, or candidate doesn't really understand how to use unstressed vowels. That's a phonological feature that's missing. With fluency and coherence, some examiner might think, I didn't like he was off topic and there were a few questions he didn't really answer in a satisfying way. Maybe it deserves a 6, not a 7. Could it be 6.5? Absolutely. For me, there is enough in there for a 7. Vocab, I think is good, but I think for grammar is maybe the closest to an 8 is with the grammar, and I wouldn't be surprised if the candidate got 7.5 overall in the real test. But for me, yeah, 7.0. I think that is fair. He's the low side of C1. And if I was interviewing this candidate like as a placement test to put him into one, if I was teaching groups, to put him into a group that I had, I would say, yeah, you're okay for the C1 group. You are low C1. I think that's where the candidate is. Of course, you're welcome to disagree with me if you like. I had a lovely comment recently saying, like, I think you are not expert. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Keep the lovely comments coming. Remember, this is my subjective interpretation of the candidate's performance. I have been examining for a long time. I have been teaching English for a very long time. I do have education in linguistics. I have education in teaching. Yeah, so if you think I'm trash, that's okay. I'm okay with that. But yeah, for me, 7.0, lower end of C1, and a nice guy, really nice guy. Anyway, if you'd like your own free practice speaking test with feedback, or if you'd like me to check your IELTS writing tasks, then I collect my candidates from my Telegram channel, Expert Examiner. Basically, when I'm ready to take a speaking test, I post in that Telegram channel, and then a bunch of people write, pick me, pick me, pick me, pick me, pick me. One person is selected at random, and then they get the writing check or the speaking test. Now, if you want to avoid that lottery, you can pay for a practice speaking test or pay for a writing check, but it's not cheap because, I'm deep into my career as an English teacher, and I don't work for less than what I believe I deserve. But if you do have extra money and you want to pay for that, then information can be found on my website, expertexaminer.com. I'll put a link to everything in the description. More videos coming soon from me. But for now, bye-bye.